So you busted your bottom in high school and managed to score straight A's. You made sure you padded out your college applications by enrolling in every after-school program your school had available. So you played varsity football while also being the head cheerleader for your own games and captain of the chess team. All the sacrifices were worth it though, because you got a scholarship to your first pick school. But like with many college students who get scholarships, you still had to take out a huge loan to cover all the extra expenses. That's books, parking pass fees, meals, dormitory expenses, school library fees, printer fees, campus breathable oxygen fees, and fees for processing your fees. But hey, you still did it. You shunned your social life and graduated top of your class. You've done it. You've taken that first bold step in the American dream and graduated college. Now pack your bags. It's time to move back home. Because your diploma means bupkis since every employer wants previous experience anyways, and you're saddled with so much student loan payments that you technically can't even afford to be alive right now. Today, we're once more turning to your favorite infographic show staff lab rat and challenging him to live like most modern American college graduates by having him move back home for 30 days. Day 1. So I had a lot of explaining to my parents to even make this challenge possible. See, they know I'm a working writer out here in Los Angeles, and they know about many of the things I've written, including some of the things they've watched, but this whole challenge thing, well, I never really bothered to tell them. It's kind of an open secret. I didn't really hide it, but I don't really volunteer the information out either. It's never really fun explaining just how weird your job can get to people. So I had my mom and pops watch a few challenges, to which my mom immediately asked me how the girlfriend puts up with my life. She then immediately felt bad for her and ended up leaving our Skype conversation so she could call her privately and make sure that she was all right. And these challenges weren't stressing her out too much. Her, not her son, her own flesh and blood, who you know actually has to put himself or his body, or his dignity at least, on the line with each challenge, but the one who just gets to watch it happen, clearly my mom has a favorite. My dad mostly just thought it was funny, and he really liked the eating the spiciest pepper challenge, which just so happens to have been the first official challenge episode, by the way. As far as he's concerned, my safety or comfort doesn't matter much. He just wants to make sure I'm being paid well. So long story short, they agreed to let me fly home and live there for 30 days. I'm kinda hesitant about this, to be honest. I left home at 18 and only ever went back to visit. I haven't lived with my parents in over a decade. I also really like my life out here in Los Angeles, and they just retired in a small town in Kentucky, so culture clash for sure. I hated it out there. There's just so little to do. Then there's also the freedom thing. I just enjoy having my own life, and it's going to be weird living under their roof again. I mean, I'm an adult now, so I won't even have chores or curfews or anything silly like that, but it's just weird to not be independent, even if only for 30 days. I guess I'll find out just how weird. So that's it. The girlfriend's taking me to the airport later today, and I'll be back home in time for supper. Weird. I never use the word supper. I'm already starting to feel the effects of this challenge. Oh, by the way, this isn't just a 30-day home vacation, because of course, I have many challenges to undergo during these 30 days, but you'll have to stay subscribed to find out what they are. See you guys in a week. Day 7. You should absolutely do everything you can to avoid ever moving back in with your parents. Consider that a general piece of advice. It's not really about rules or anything like that, it's just, I don't know, weird to the max to have to move back home when you're an adult. I know a lot of people don't have a choice in the matter, but if you can avoid it, you really should. If you're forced to move home because of financial situation, man, you guys are the real heroes out there. So immediately upon landing, it became obvious to me just how different things are back home versus my life in California. I'm used to densely packed urban sprawl with the trendiest and shiniest new shopping and dining venues anywhere in the world, spanning block after block, expensive cars, and people, typically women, wearing equally expensive clothing and jewelry. Back home, there's literally none of that. In a way, it's really refreshing. In another, it's sort of depressing. I'm not the flashy type at all, but my first few hours back home just really brought back how little there is to this place. One thing though, trees. Big, beautiful green trees everywhere. LA doesn't have many trees, it's a coastal desert, and you gotta drive out of town to see some pines. Here though, you've got trees of all shapes and sizes, and they're everywhere. Oh, and also parking lots. If you've never lived in Los Angeles or New York, then you probably don't understand that parking lots are God's gift to his undeserving children. Back home, it can cost you upwards of $15 just to park your car. Here, literally every place has a parking lot. It almost makes me cry, or at least my wallet. So the first night went well enough. Parents asked me how things are going, though literally the first question my mother asked when we sat down for dinner was when me and the girlfriend were getting married. She's kind of old school, and even though we've both explained it to her numerous times, she still doesn't understand, or maybe just doesn't like that we're kind of not doing that. I had to remind her that we're both completely committed to spending the rest of our lives together, maybe having kids one day, and that we don't need a big ceremony or the government to make that official. Honestly, I just think she really wants the ceremony. Hard to blame a mother. My parents are lucky enough to have hung on to the house they bought while I was still in high school, so I get to sleep in my old room, and that's a whole other level of weird. Me and the girlfriend have visited plenty of times before, but I've always insisted on staying in a hotel, mostly because my mother is old school. She won't let us sleep together in the same bed, even though, again, we're basically married. To her, until it's official, we're not allowed to sleep together, at least not under her roof. And it's just so weird that she needs a marriage ceremony before that's okay. Staying in this room has brought back a lot of memories, but in so many ways it feels like I'm sleeping in a stranger's bed. The very last time I slept in this bed was the night before I shipped out for basic training, and even though that was like 12 years ago, it might as well have been an entire lifetime away. Mornings in your parents' house are another bit of weird. You're so used to your own routine, and then you lumber into the kitchen and find your dad already there, and it sort of hits you. This isn't your space, it's his. He's the alpha dog around here. You can't just stroll out in your underwear and make yourself some tea, although he certainly gets to, as I was unfortunate enough to find out. When I ran into him and yelled at him for being in the kitchen in his boxers, he reminded me that me and my sister moved out years ago, and if he wants to walk around in his house as naked as the day he was born, then he very well will do just that. Skipping past a very difficult readjustment period, I tried to carve out my own routine under my parents' roof. I already feel like I don't have the freedom I normally have in my own life. Even though it's not like I'm living under any kind of rules or anything, I just feel so restricted in everything I do, like I was a teenager again. Both of my parents are retired, so they're home all the time. In order to avoid going stir-crazy or having my mom drive me insane by constantly asking me about marriage or grandkids, I decided to rent a car and explore the town throughout my week. Even though it's been over a decade, literally nothing has changed. Though, I guess I'm not surprised. All in all, this challenge is turning out to be a real bore, to be honest with you. Day 14. I Skyped with the girlfriend today, or at least I tried to. But when my mother found out, she took my iPad away from me and basically hogged it the entire night talking to her. I told you, she has a very clear favorite in this relationship, and it's not her own flesh and blood son. When they say their goodbyes, my mother brought me the tablet and very loudly said, "Such a beautiful, sweet girl. Shame nobody wants to marry her." This challenge, honestly, couldn't end fast enough. My second week under my parents' roof was much like my first. I did get some chores assigned to me, or as my dad put it, if you're gonna be living under my roof rent-free, you best pitch in around here. They have a pretty big property and a decent-sized garden where they grow their own stuff, so I mostly helped out with outdoor work. My dad tried to push me and see if, as he put it, city living's made you soft. Ha! He thinks city living with a fitness and health Nazi girlfriend makes you soft. He's got another thing coming. I've learned to not even leave my room until about 10 in the morning, which is when my dad officially decides to put on pants. My mom got on his case about it, and he protested very loudly that he bought and paid for this damn house and he'll walk around pantless if he feels like it. I guess I can't fault him. A man's home is his castle, and hey, he's had a tough life. He's earned not wearing pants until 10 a.m. if he doesn't want to. This week I went with my dad to the local VFW post. For those of you who don't know, that's a Veterans of Foreign Wars outpost that's kind of like a social club for veterans. It never really hit me until we were there that night, but we're both veterans, and both of us have the injuries that sadly typically come along with that status. The weird thing is we both got them in what's technically the same war, just at completely different times. I guess even though I know America has been at war in Iraq and Afghanistan for 2 decades, it never really hit me until that realization. I've never really liked going to any sort of veteran events or anything like that. As far as I'm concerned, it's best to let sleeping dogs lie. Walking into a room of vets, many of them wounded in ways that are far more obvious than me and my pops, it was honestly just a bad time. But there was camaraderie there that's hard to deny, and honestly something that somewhere deep in my heart I know I miss every day. You just don't make friendships in the real world the way you make them when your life is on the line. I've been mostly hanging out with my dad this week, and I'll admit it's nice to reconnect. When I visit, it's typically only for a few days at a time. Christmas is the longest stretch of time I'll ever come back home for. I guess we're both kind of gruff about it, and don't really say things like "I missed you" to anyone other than the woman we love. But I guess I really have missed him, just not stumbling into him wearing nothing but boxer shorts at 9 a.m. Day 21. 3 weeks down, 1 week to go. Honestly, living with the parents is turning out to be so much more restrictive than I thought. Even though I'm not restricted in any way, shape, or form, I think I'm just too wildly independent for this whole experience. I am literally itching to get back to living in my own place. I spent more time with my mother this week, and she took me to a few of the social things she does throughout the week. My mom's, well, she's not like regular moms. She may be living in a small town, but she's got no small town mind. She's whip smart, has about half a dozen more college degrees than my dad, exercises vigorously, teaches her own karate class at the local YMCA, and lets my dad roar all he wants around the house like a big lion. But it's obvious to everyone that she's the one in charge. And, oh my god, I just realized why my mother and girlfriend get along so well. It all suddenly makes perfect, terrifying sense. Wow, okay, sorry, had to take a moment to process that. Anyway, one of our first trips together was to the YMCA, where she wanted me to help her teach her karate class. Now, I know my mom's super into fitness and she's done martial arts for decades, but I thought she was like teaching a class for kids. No, she doesn't teach kids. Well, I mean she does, since she teaches all ages, but she also teaches adult classes, and you know what they do in those classes? They spar. Yeah, with headgear and protective equipment, but they still physically spar against each other. And that's the story of how I ended up sparring against my own mother. Yeah, you heard that right. I had to fight my mother. Now, it's been years since my training in the military, but my mother always taught me as a kid. First Taekwondo, which she taught me for what she called the essentials, and then she skipped straight into Krav Maga because, as my 50-year-old dear sweetheart of a mother put it, anything else is for, and then she said a word we can't repeat, because infographics is a family show. Listen, I wasn't about to be the guy that put his mother into a rear naked chokehold or an arm bar until she tapped out, but I'll tell you what, she sure as hell tried to be the mother that put her son into those exact positions. We used to spar back when I was a teen, but she was in her late 30s then, and let me tell you, age hasn't done much to slow her down. I came back home with an almost black eye. She faked me out with a low kick and got me with the left jab when I dropped my hands to block her kick. My dad barely even commented on it when we got back home. He knows better. He's been on the receiving end of their sparring sessions together more than once over their many decades of marriage. I feel like I've been watching them together a lot over the last 3 weeks. And I'm suddenly aware of so many similarities between not just me and my parents and the way we act at home, but between my relationship and theirs. It's really true what they say. You typically end up with someone that reminds you of your mother. Day 31. I'm back home in LA now, and my final week of living with my parents was in many ways my most surprising. In one way, it was literally surprising. I went fishing with my dad at the start of the week, and when we got home that afternoon, I found out my mom had gone to the airport and picked up my girlfriend. Apparently, they've been in secret cahoots this entire time, and she planned that she'd come stay for the final few days. If living with your parents alone is weird, it's even weirder with your significant other. And it's even weirder when your mom herself is acting weird and not letting the woman you've been with for 6 years and committed your entire life to sleep in the same room as you. I suddenly remembered why I always insist on getting a hotel when we visit. It's the silliest damn thing in the world to not be allowed to sleep in the same bed just because we're not married. So she ended up taking the guest bedroom and I stayed in my room. Though you know what? It's real easy to sneak from one room to the other in the dead of night, and it's kind of really fun. For the first time in this whole experiment, I was actually enjoying living with my parents, because sneaking her into my room late at night made me feel like a kid again. My mom and girlfriend spent most of the week together, and I spent a lot of time with my dad. There's honestly little friction between me and my parents, even after so many weeks of living back home with them. We're all just so independent that it doesn't really bother us. I feel like this experience would have been a lot harder with a different family, maybe one that's more overbearing. Then there's also the fact that I am still a functioning adult with a job, so I could afford a rental car to get away if I felt like it. People who run into financial dead ends don't really have that option. Like I said before, you guys are the real heroes here. This week was honestly kind of uneventful, except for one glaring exception. We all went out to dinner together, and me and the girlfriend got some stares. Suddenly, I remembered one of the reasons I hated growing up here in California, or even in New York. Her and I never get any attention for being a mixed-race couple, but here, well, small town sometimes means small minds. Nobody said anything, thankfully, but the stares were very obvious at times. It made her uncomfortable. She grew up in upstate New York and was definitely insulated against stuff like this as a kid. I'm very cool, calm, and collected. I don't react until somebody's words or actions actually hurt someone I love. My mother, on the other hand, let's just say she believes the best defense is a strong offense. When the stares became too much, she very loudly threatened to, and I quote, smack the googly eyes out of anyone who has a problem with my beautiful daughter-in-law. Did I mention it's a small town? Everyone knows she teaches martial arts at the local Y, and that she very much meant it. The stares pretty quickly died down after that. The same mother that threatened to publicly fight a bunch of racists became a mess of tears when it came time to leave though, although I feel obligated to point out that at the airport she did the majority of her hugging and tearful goodbying with my girlfriend instead of once more her own son. I had a few hours on the plane ride to the West Coast to reflect on this whole experience, and I definitely wouldn't recommend someone moving back home unless they absolutely had to. I guess maybe if you really miss your family you could move down the block from them, or maybe like 10 blocks away. Honestly, just try and keep it to a distance where visits are common but not too common. Be far enough away to discourage casual everyday visits is what I'm saying. Sure, it's weird living with your parents, but even if you're an adult, it just kinda seems like you slip back into an old rhythm. They end up in charge somehow, even if you are actually an adult and not a kid anymore, and while you don't have to do everything they say, you just sort of feel like you have to because you live under their roof. I kind of worry about people who never move away, or who move away late in life. Can you really become an independent person until you finally live on your own? Again though, I know this isn't an economic reality for some people, so I'm definitely not judging anyone, but it's something to consider. And speaking of things to consider, I find myself thinking back to the last few nights at home, with all 4 of us living under the same roof. Something's changed, I can feel it. Watching my mom and dad together for weeks on end, their random arguments, and just day-to-day life together. It's so obvious that this is the future I want, and I know exactly who I want to be with, because she's been at my side for the best and worst of the last 6 years of my life. Maybe my mom's incessant nagging finally got into my head, but maybe there really is something to actually being married, to publicly and officially declaring that you're in this forever together. Great. Thanks for turning my world upside down again, Infographic Show. Have you ever had to move back in with your parents? What was the experience like? Let us know in the comments, and go check out our other challenge from the girlfriend's perspective, Chained to My Boyfriend for 72 Hours. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more great content.